Put yourself in the shoes of somebody who leads a completely double life, and you have to as well. As far as friends and neighbours were concerned, Ian Phoenix was a salesman for hearing aids, but his true work emerged after his violent death in 1994, when a Chinook helicopter carrying him and more than 20 others smashed into a mountain on the Mull of Kintyre. On board were some of Britain's best intelligence men on their way from Ulster to a top security conference in Scotland. Ian's job put him at the forefront of surveillance against the IRA, and soon after marrying him, Susan grew accustomed to living not behind double glazing, but quite literally bulletproof glass. Every time she dropped the keys in her driveway, that was an excuse to check under the car for a bomb. So Ian's death in such a tragic accident must have seemed a tragic irony, Susan, because you lived, if you like, in the shadow of death by a bullet or a bomb, and then it happened that way.
Yes. It was ironic, as you say. We spent a lifetime protecting Ian's life within the family, subconsciously, and, well, they didn't get him in the end.
Did you ever, as the years went by, feel that the price that you all had to pay in terms of living with that fear, and also the practical things like, you know, being under security surveillance a lot of the time, was it too high a price to pay for what he did?
No. He was worth it. And when I look back at the life that we lived, we had a good life. And it was very important to all of us. We had a broad spectrum of friends. We didn't socialise very often with security forces or the police. And our friends come from all walks of life. Our children have seen a lot of the world. They've enjoyed people. No, I think it was a good life.
Who knew? Did anybody know except you and your children?
Yes, of course. Our closest friends knew. We're friends from 20 years ago, and they knew, but it wasn't something we talked about. When Ian came home, he became the family man, the man that liked to open a good bottle of wine for you, go shooting, hunting. It was a different life. It was a kind of a double life, I suppose. But
did he tell you everything?
Most things. We shared. I'm a very nosy person, and I couldn't say, "Did you have a nice day at the office, dear?" and leave it at that.
No.
I said, "Well, what did you do?" And you know, so he would have had a hard job not sharing. But of course, he didn't tell me the nitty-gritties of top security stuff that I didn't need to know.
No.
But I did need to know what he was doing, because that, to me, in a relationship, stops you worrying. Knowledge prevents worry.
Well, how did the children feel about this?
About the book?
No, about this life that you were living. Because presumably they had to know.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. From what age did they know?
From, I suppose, you know, it just becomes a subconscious part of your life from an early age. It's almost you have to tell the children, if not to tell lies, to pretend that Daddy does something else. I know when they were very young, some of their friends thought he was a postman or a bus driver, that kind of thing. It's difficult because you're having to teach a moral code, but we do have to bend the truth to protect Daddy and his friends.
But did you never worry that, you know what kids are like, that perhaps, you know, in a tight corner in the playground, they might say, well, look, my dad, he fights terrorists?
No.
You know, when they were little.
I'm very proud of my children, as are most IUC and security forces families, I think, because they're very mature, and because we've shared our lives with them as adults, they've been our best friends, and I think that's important. So it gives them a more mature aspect to life, because they know their dad's out there protecting their community and their friends.
I think I read somewhere that you had to sleep with weapons in your bedroom, and that if you got a mysterious knock, say at 2 o'clock in the morning, a knock on the door, I mean, there would be instant alert. I mean, you'd get your gun and throw yourself down on the floor, and he'd go downstairs with a pistol.
I think that was a particularly graphic part of the book. That was a way in the early 70s, when the fashion the IRA had then was to blow policemen's heads off in their windows, you know. Knocked at the door, you open your bedroom window automatically. And we had to remember not to do that. Ian was a young constable at that time, and he was guarding someone in the hospital that this had happened to. And the door did go at 2 o'clock in the night, and Ian said, "Oh, I can't think who that is." "Well, you better cover me." And I remember lying at the top of the stairs in my nightie, looking down with the shotgun, and he was Starsky and Hutch style behind the door. And the door opened, a gloved hand came in and dropped the paycheck. Just thought I'd drop it in on my way home from working.
Oh, great.
God.
And we all just collapsed in giggles. You know.
Did you have weapons training?
Not officially. As a teenager, I was a marksman with a .22 rifle, so I always liked to be in that area. But Ian did teach me to use his pistol, because I always said to him, "Look, if they come for you, I couldn't just watch. You know, I'd want to do something." So he did show me how to use his on one occasion.
He had very strong views, didn't he, about the psychology of the terrorist, and the way that people involved in the political process, politicians, didn't quite understand it.
Yes. He felt very strongly. He felt that the government was not necessarily giving itself the information it needed to fight terrorists. He felt very strongly about worldwide terrorism. Tiptoeing around the terrorists, I think is a word we've been using this week, that he felt that governments did do, and was quite inappropriate. He felt they didn't address the criminal aspect of terrorism, and he felt they could be, if not defeated, at least contained to get a proper political peace process.
When you say the criminal aspect, I presume you don't mean the fact that a terrorist act is in itself a criminal act. Are you talking about associated crime? You know, I mean creaming off the top.
Both, I think. I mean, obviously there's a very lucrative market in being a terrorist, and the criminal aspects there, he often felt some of the people got lost amongst that mishmash of, Ian's favourite word was a gouger. You know, once a gouger, always a gouger, and of course the terrorists with a high ideal could prey on these people. He wanted to see those people on both sides of the community removed, so that the ordinary person could get on with their lives. I remember a family that lived in our suburb of Belfast many years ago saying that they were moving, they actually moved to my hometown of Peterborough to get their teenage sons away from the men that they felt would come to recruit them. I think that's very sad that people had to leave their own country because of this cancer that has been allowed to breed amongst them.
Did you always have to check under your car when you went shopping?
Should have. Ian would say, "Are you sure you looked under that car?" Well, yes, I did. And of course I didn't always. But we were very concerned when the children became teenagers in case they didn't. If we were away on holiday, we said, "Do you think they're looking under the car?" It's that kind of tension that you don't realise is there, but it is.
One of the reasons you've written the book, Phoenix, about your husband, is you feel he never got the recognition that he should have had, because, you know, I mean, his work, and as well as the work of other people, paved the way for the peace process, but you think that actually what he did was seen as something of an embarrassment by the politicians.
Yes, I feel a lot of the work of the IUC is seen as an embarrassment by the politicians. It's almost a denigration of the police force, because now we want to forget that people have been there fighting terrorists to prepare the way for the peace process. I feel very strongly about that, and I think it's very sad. I would like to see the IUC being able to stand up and be prouder of themselves instead of trying, well, because we can't be public and we can't say, well, my husband in the IUC or I'm an IUC man. There's a denigration of self in that, which I think is very sad.
How did you get the news that the helicopter had gone in?
I was driving home. I had put Ian actually on the helicopter almost. I had driven him there, and I'd had dinner with my daughter and was driving home, and I heard it. I was driving along the road, and
but on the news, you mean?
Yes, Radio Ulster. Just driving along, I could still find difficulty passing that part of the road, and it just came on, and people were passing me, and I suddenly thought, gosh, you know, I was just driving. I thought normally going no, 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 and the tears were streaming down my face, and I must have been driving in a haphazard way. And I remember seeing someone passing me in the outside lane, looking at me. And I tried to get into a police establishment, and they were looking down from those little thingies they sit in. You know, I said, "Let me in, I want to use the phone." But looking back, they probably thought I was going to blow the place up.
Was it an accident? Are you certain it was an accident?
We don't know.
You don't know.
I would say it is as close to an accident as anything, but I don't believe we will ever know.
And are you safe now? I mean, you're sitting here publicly, you're doing interviews about this book, but you still live in the same house in Ireland. Do you feel perfectly safe coming out like this?
Well,
you feel you've got...
I've lived dangerously for 20-odd years. I think if anybody wants me now, it's a bit late, you know, but I live between Ireland and France.
Right. And your children are grown up?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you say one of the many sadnesses associated with his very sad end is that he was never given a medal. And you felt he'd earned a medal, and you feel the book is, if you like, a testament and a medal to him.
I remember when the IUC unveiled a very grand plaque in police headquarters, which was very nice. And I said to Sir Hugh Ansley, who was then the Chief Constable, "Well, what about our men? When are they getting their medals?" And he said, "Oh, Susan, I'm looking into it." And I said, "Well, will you, will you do something about it?" "Yes, yes." I said, "Well, I'll be back." He said, "Oh, Susan, I'm sure you will." Well, if I may borrow your book, I would like to say, well, Sir Hugh, I am back.
Were you
from the ashes.
Very briefly, were you allowed to write everything you wanted to write, or I know it's been vetted by the security services. Has much been taken out?
Only that they could convince me would have endangered a life. That's all. Nothing that would have been embarrassing, because a little bit of boat rocking doesn't go amiss, I think. Ian would have approved.
I'm sure he would. Susan, you're a very brave lady. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good to see you.